And welcome back for another episode of Offseason Radio. My name is Paige and I'm joined by these two lovely guys. Matthew, Joyce, how are you, Joycey?
Not too bad. Let's get to the football.
And obviously, Damon Jackman.
Yes, I've been called many names, and that's another one. That's a new one, Paige. That's
well
a good
done.
one.
Fantastic, Damon. Good to have you here. We're going to jump straight into it and cut to the chase because we're going to talk about Geelong. And obviously, the greatest team is all self-proclaimed. Look, they had a pretty good year this year, and it looked like at one point they were going to go on and win the flag, and that was a pretty good assessment because they ended up winning 18 games and just dropped the 4, finishing second on the ladder this year, which was a fantastic year considering they bailed out of the finals in the first week last year to Fremantle, and probably the final series for them started with a bit of controversy. They got that home final at Simmons Stadium. Bit of a divide over whether they should have or not, but it didn't matter because Fremantle, they brought game and they won.
Yeah.
And that really, to me, that probably signalled the end of their finals campaign for me. But look, what went right? Every year we probably expect the Cats bubble to burst, and obviously the most dominant team of the past 6 years, we sort of expected them to perhaps drop off this year. But they did recruit well with, obviously, McIntosh didn't play a game. Rivers came across and was spent the most of the year injured. And Caddy was, well, a big flop. But
I thought Caddy's final was all right. His final series.
Actually, you know what?
His goal kicking, I think, was the feature.
I'd say in the final, that one goal he kicked, that was sensational. But he, for me, I don't think he really stood out. He played a good role. I don't think he stood out as much as they probably would have hoped he would have. But anyway, he will be a better player again next year. But look, as I said, every year we probably expect for them to bottom out and to drop off, and they just never go away. It's so annoying. But look, they've
done the transfer right, in my opinion. A couple every year, and it really allows the kids to come into the side a little bit at a time while still maintaining that Geelong culture. So
from a management point of view, they just do it so well.
Yep.
And considering how many players they had approaching 30 or over,
still do.
They've done it continuously quite well. But look, a great good stat here. The Cats lost just the 4 games during the season by a combined 23 points.
Yeah.
Their greatest losing margin was only 10 points to North. So that pretty much tells you how good their season was. For me, Stephen Motlop was a fantastic improver. Al Christensen, I'd say. Little Bundy, he was fantastic. Joel Selwood, every year we say, he's a champion, he's a great player, but what he lacked was goal kicking. And he kicked something like 25 goals in the last 6 weeks of the year, and came second in the Brownlow, and was a Monty to win it at one point, we thought, from Gaz. But
that last week, I think, was the only thing that let him down.
Yep, that final game. He and Dane Swan both had shockers in the final round, and Ablett managed to pole it, and that was all she wrote. But obviously, Steve Johnson had a really good year after that delayed start, and although he had in for 1 week, out for one, back in again, which was probably more frustrating for Geelong supporters than us Supercoach players. But
and
Stevie J's
he could have won the Brownlow as well had he played the entire season. He was a revelation.
He continuously amazes me. I just love him. He's I can't believe that Collingwood knocked him back because of a dodgy ankle in 2006.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Gives me hope for Daisy Thomas at Carlton.
But look, what went wrong? Obviously, the ruck for them. 5 of their big men on the list. 1 didn't play at all, while the other 4 battled form and niggles. Obviously, that one player being Hamish McIntosh, who came across last year for pick 30-ish. They basically, their ruck division, I mean, you look at the guys like Dawson Simpson broke down again. Trent West was basically sent back to the VFL and struggled for form. And Nathan Vardy, for me, who's going to be seriously elite, he had his setbacks throughout the year, and it looked like when he was just starting to string games together that he fell apart again. But look, another year, hopefully a better luck for him. But
and Dawson Simpson, I thought, had a very good year in comparison. I mean, he's always had back trouble and stress fractures and that sort of thing, but I think he had a much better run at it. He's quite tall, even for a ruckman, and I think he did a lot towards not cementing his spot, but really giving putting himself out there as a genuine option for their number one ruck.
One for me, and I think he's become my favourite cat this year, is the Blitz.
The Blitz.
Blitzarv's favourite Supercoach player. Those 2 back-to-back weeks, he got me over 100. Thank you, Blitz. Obviously, the former steeplechaser, he wasn't he a breath or fresh breath of air, I should say. He was absolutely fantastic, and obviously the bad. Tom Hawkins' back just struggled in the back half of the year, especially heading into finals, which was just so...
Was that the most played clip in the history of clips? Like him not being able to bend over to pick up that ball?
I
was sick of that.
Yeah, it was... to be honest, it's quite sad because he's such a good player, and when he's up and about, he's one of the better forwards in the competition. But this back injury, they just can't fix it, and you can take a disc out, but that just means he's not going to be able to play football again.
And just on Hawkins, the current trade period, I mean, they've delisted Podsiadly. He's now gone to Adelaide. I'm a bit surprised. I mean, Hawkins, a back injury is something that just doesn't go away overnight. I mean, it may linger into next season. I think it's a long-term injury.
I think it's something he's going to have to carry with him for the rest of his career.
Yeah, and I'm kind of surprised that they got rid of Podsiadly. I mean, he is on the wrong side of 30. But he did come to AFL football quite late, so he hasn't had the extended, exposure to AFL footy and the rigours of it. So I think it was a bit surprising to see them get rid of him. I mean, if Hawkins does go down again next season, they're going to have to rely on the likes of Kirsten and Vardy.
I think the forward line for Geelong is definitely developing. The small forwards they're quite flush for. Billy Smets we should see a lot more of next year. He was fantastic. I really liked Guthrie when he basically played through the midfield, and that one goal that he kicked was just incredibly impressive. But for me, I think you'll see Kirsten, Burberry, those types of guys be really given more of an opportunity to push into that role. Podsiadly, although for support reasons, I thought they would have kept him around for insurance, but would have said, look, mate, you're going to take the back seat, and we're not going to play you as quite often because we have to play these guys coming through. And that's probably the stranglehold that old generation Geelong still have on the current Geelong side. Not that Podsiadly was part of that era, but he came on as a 28-year-old.
Yep.
And given he's 31 now, I think,
yep.
I'm surprised I didn't keep him on for insurance and at least offer him a 1-year deal, but probably more of a relaxed role. But obviously, for me, the big improvers were Matty Stokes was just fantastic. Stephen Motlop, and for me, Andrew Mackie went to another level again, if that's even possible. He owned that backline. He was fantastic. I thought Lonergan continued to stand up. Harry Taylor is just... he could be someone that they might trial in up forward next year on a more consistent basis if they get that ability to play Lonergan and Rivers. But, I mean... Harry Taylor's the linchpin there in defence, and the defence is basically structured around him accordingly. But look, what they probably really need is probably another really quick player in the mould of a Motlop and Murdoch would really probably complement their midfield. They've got some pacey plays, but no one that is going to...
They need a bit more size. I mean, they've got Hawkins, but if Hawkins isn't there, what have they got?
Yeah, it's a bit... I think you'll see Jackson Thurlow for one next year will really start to play a lot of game time. Joel Corey's going to be... He'll play his last year. Sorry, Corey Enright. Joel Corey's been delisted, but Corey Enright will play out the year next year. Probably maybe even go again if his body holds up. He's the sort of player they will allow to make his own decision on his future.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But Jackson Thurlow, for me, he can play tall, he can play small, he can play that medium role. Thurlow really reminds me of a Heath Shaw.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
I love him. I love him. Yeah, Mackie as well, but I really love him as that rebounding defender. He's quite fleet-footed, quite good in the air, really balanced one-on-one. And
exceptional kick.
And incredible kick. He'll take their kick out for the next 10 years. But he'll be one on to come next year. And as I said, Billy Smets as well, who can play basically any position on the ground and play well.
And Holland Smith to get more.
And Holland Smith will come in too. The great thing for Geelong is that you don't have to... a few people will say that this trade period's been a bit boring for them, but when you've got a side that has won back-to-back VFL... they've been in 2 grand finals back-to-back. Won one, lost one. they've got exceptional talent in that VFL side. And that VFL side, those players that are AFL listed obviously are really going to start pushing on next year.
Yeah, and Geelong have their own affiliated side, so it's not like they're just pushing all out trying to win. It's still, if you're in the VFL, you're a developing player, and if they're developing players who they're playing specifically in positions for development are still getting to grand finals, that's a very good indication of how good they are.
And looking to the draft, pick 15 or 16.
One of the
16.
Two.
16, I think so. I think for them, they'd probably be looking to really bring in, I'd probably say Darcy Gardner.
If he slips.
If Darcy Gardner's there, I can really see them taking on, and he's a Geelong Falcon boy too, close to home. They love drafting out of the Falcons Academy. But for me, you look at Diz, and Diz is probably someone who fits that next generation Geelong side, that key defender. Harry Taylor's getting on, Lonigan's getting on, Corey Enright's getting on.
I could see them take Blake Acres. I think he's the type of left field thing.
Yeah, he was the next one on my list, is that Blake Lakers. Blake Acres, sorry. Obviously, 192 centimetre midfielder from WA.
Yeah, he's grown a bit, hasn't
he? He has, absolutely exceptional. Probably didn't see as much as him as we would have liked because he had a subluxed shoulder just prior to the championships and was rotated heavily. But there's no doubt that he's always been considered a first-round pick, potentially anywhere between 10 to 15, and that probably falls within the area that Geelong are in, and I think they'll be lucky enough to get him. But even someone like a Lewis Taylor, really, really quick, and when we're talking about quick players, Louis Taylor for me is someone that they'd love. And I mean, and just to add on to that, just to keep with the Falcons theme, is my little mate Aaron Christensen, who is the younger brother of Al of Bundy, so they would probably like to get another. He's probably someone they maybe look at as a late pick or a rookie draft pick, but they are interested, and obviously they have that family connection to Geelong, even his father and whatnot. So for me, it could be an option.
Yeah, definitely.
But moving on, we're now going to speak about Fremantle.
Fremantle, so close yet so far for Ross Lyon, yet again.
0-4
in grand finals.
0-4.
If you count the drawn grand final.
Which you do.
Which you do, I suppose. He did, though, take Fremantle from 11th in 2011, so that was Mark Harvey's last year, to 6th in his first year, and then second, or I suppose second, you can call it second, in a grand final in only 2 years into the job. And if you're taking someone from out of the finals into the grand final, you're doing a good job. But it might, raise question in regards to Freo's grand final game plan, I suppose, because you've got some players, and I'm going to be a bit critical here of Daniel Pearce, because his pure outside game plan does not suit finals football. And I think Stephen Hill's got the agility and the acceleration
the explosiveness
to be able to create that space for himself. But I think Pearce just runs and tries to stand somewhere and receive the ball, and that's not good enough in finals football.
He and Ballantyne were found out in that grand final.
Definitely.
And something like that, when you perform, or their lack of, on that stage, people don't forget that, and that will haunt him. He will go into pre-season, that will follow him until he can obviously gain retribution for that.
And they've already secured Colin Sylvia this year through free agency. Very good pickup. I think just with Melbourne's recent policy of good blokes around the club, like really solid citizens. Not to say Colin Sylvia isn't, but he's had his past history of indiscretions. I think maybe moving away from the Melbourne sort of football scene, pure football. I know it's still very big over in WA, but I think it'll be really good for him, and I think that really gives Fremantle another dimension up forward, which they don't really have. I mean, they've got Main and they've got Pavlich and Fife sort of pinch hits there, and they've got Walters, but I think he's more of the midfielder, half-forward type than a pure goal sneak, and I think that's what Freo really need, because they don't have enough avenues to goal, in my opinion.
There's no disputing the fact that he has the talent there. It is there. It's undisputed. It's just the fact they haven't been able, Melbourne weren't able to extract that consistency from him in his time there. But he was probably a victim of the lack of leaders at Melbourne, and he had that placed above his head for mine, was that he had to endorse this leadership role that he probably didn't want. I mean, you look at, there's a lot of great players who just don't want the leadership role. Yep. Dane Spon was offered a captaincy and knocked it back. He was even offered to be in a leadership group and said, I just don't want to do it. some players just don't want it, where others just spend their whole lives trying to gain that.
Yep.
And for me, Sylvia, I think the fact that, and when you think of it like this, as you said, their best midfielders, when you look at Fife, Mundy, Barlow, Hill, go on again, all of a sudden, Sylvia's at the back of the line there.
Yeah.
Now, tell me he is not going to relish being able to play that. I would probably argue he might be the 5th or 6th best midfielder there. And he's going to be one of the lesser guys in that very good quality midfield. When you put him in that situation and he is allowed to play his natural game, he doesn't cop that much attention because there aren't that many young guys around him where he has to take ownership of the team for, he's going to flourish in that environment, and he's going to love being able to play that free role out in a wing, pushing forward.
Yeah, I know you speak about his natural game, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if that's something that Ross Lyon hammers out of him because... And becomes more of a boring player. Because I think that's the sort of thing that Ross Lyon will say. Like, I don't care how good you look on the highlight reel, Cole. If you win games for us, that's all I care about.
Yep.
So I think he's going to make him into a more boring footballer.
Yep.
But he's going to be effective.
A solid citizen contributing player.
Yeah, and considering they finished in the grand final, they only had one All-Australian, and that was Michael Johnson. And although he did have a stellar year, I thought... it really shows how even the spread of contributors was for Fremantle all year. I would have had Michael Walters there as well.
I would have too. I thought for me, Sun was a bit unlucky. But, I mean, you look at, like, Fife was a bit in and out during the year, which probably cost him a little bit. Mundy, if he had a clean run at this year, would have been a lock for All-Australian. I thought he was quite good.
He was exceptional in the final.
Oh, he was just outstanding. But like Michael Johnson, absolutely stellar year. Cannot fault that selection. One of the better ones for mine in the All-Australian side.
Yeah.
And the other controversial one who missed out, of course, was Crowley, the creepy Crowley.
It's, you know what,
he did a great job on Mitchell.
I am such a fan of Crowley. Every club needs a Crowley, and you know what? It's because people are so they're so conditioned to meet differences with hatred. And you look at it, what Crowley does, and Crowley was drafted initially as a forward, but when you look at Crowley and what he's been able to do, he has shut down every player he has played on this year. Now, if there was a role for a tagger in the All-Australian team, you'd lock him in for the next 10 years, regardless if he's playing or not. But the problem is that they don't... the All-Australian team for mine isn't overly reflective of the better teams in of the better players in the competition. Especially when you take into the fact, well, again, we look at Alex Rance to bring up... we're just moving away from Freo for a moment, but Alex Rance should have been an All-Australian. Played a lockdown role.
If you ignore his first month, yes.
For me, it's just a lot of players that... it's hard to fit 40-odd players into a 25.
It's just like the finals. We keep saying these guys should make the finals this year. It's hard to fit 12 teams into the 8.
Exactly, but for me, Crowley is an absolute star. And his harassment of Mitchell, although they didn't win the flag...
Yeah.
I think the selectors tend to overlook those players, like especially in the midfield.
The role players.
Yeah, the role players who have a strong defensive side to their game and aren't traditionally attacking players. And, unless there's a role there, sort of identifying taggers, I think they'll more than likely miss out.
I just love his shit-eating grin as well. Whenever he's just tagging someone, he's just like having a great time. It's like his opponent's his best mate.
Did you hear Gary Ablett? They actually asked him about Crowley's tactics, and he said, it's kind of something that's a bit controversial, but when he's played on Ablett said that he just talks about what are you doing for the weekend, how have you been, just day-to-day conversation.
Takes your mind directly off the game. He's such a smart player. And you only had to see in that prelim the way that he tormented Kieran Jack. And that was borderline. That drew a lot of social media,
scrutiny.
I was such a fan of it. I just thought every time Crowley went to him, said, you're shitting yourself, mate. You're shitting yourself. Absolutely, you're scared,
Yeah. You definitely... He knows what sort of tactics to use against what sort of players. Another player, Anthony Morabito, will be coming back next year, hopefully.
I just hope he doesn't come back with another knee.
Yeah, that would be awful because he's such a talent.
Touch wood.
Yeah, and he's those tall midfielders that do really well in final situations, being able to get the ball free and that sort of thing.
Well, he came back in the waffle and showed some okay form, so... fingers crossed he can approach 2014 with a much more cleaner and injury-free slate.
Yeah, and a couple of things that I thought Freo did really well were their ruck depth was absolutely fantastic. I mean, Sandlands was out for the majority of the year. Griffin and Clark did an exceptional job.
Jack
did a good
Hanneth
job.
in his first season.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, wowee.
We can't have another big boy. Except maybe Ricky Henderson. But and their defensive pressure rose to another level as well. They had the lowest number of points against of any team in the league. So that really shows that these guys are playing Ross Lyon football right now. They are
such a great side. But until they start... they kick themselves out of a grand final win.
Yeah, they need a score.
Simple.
They need more avenues to go on. That's where they struggle. Lack of scoring. And also, I think they lack a bit of key defence depth because with McFarlane out of the side, they were a lot more shaky.
Yep.
I
mean,
he's a
Zach
big
Dawson
player
can hold his own.
He can, but he's no McFarlane.
Exactly, and that's probably the difference, is that they're different defenders. But, I mean, look, if you look forward to, I mean, they've been linked strongly with Gumbleton, 25-year-old key forward, pick 3 in 2006 draft, but...
Probably get him for pick 50-something.
Yeah, exactly, but he...
I don't know if Dodoro has anything to say about it.
Acquired. I think that I really hope for Fremantle's sake because they need Gumbleton, and Gumbleton needs Fremantle. It's a match made in heaven. This one.
Yep.
Perth boy comes back to WA, plays for Fremantle. Next year plays in a flag.
Yep.
That'd be lovely. You'd love that scenario, but I just hope his body holds up.
Yep.
I'm worried that it won't.
And their benchmark for next year has to be a premiership.
Yep.
They need to win because they've got McFarlane going out. They've got Sandlands going out. They've got Pavlich going out. Michael Johnson isn't young either, and he's all Australian.
Yep.
I mean, you've got a Crowley as well. He's not going to be around forever. They really need to do that. And they also...
Pierce is still getting on as well. He's 27, maybe?
28, 27, yeah.
28, yeah.
And I think in the draft, they really need to secure a long-term forward prospect. And again, McCarthy is the one.
McCarthy's the flavour of the month. And around these picks, they would love the WA.
Yeah, he's perfect for them.
Everything.
Replaces Pavlich, WA boy, loves the big pack marks. And Fremantle have great small forwards, in my opinion, and great crummers. So that's the sort of player that they really want in their side. And
even if Blake Acres is there or someone of that, I mean, with their second round pick, if they pick up another bloke called Nick Robertson to play as a defender in that second round, they'll be laughing all the way to the bank.
Definitely, and they've already lost Viv Mitchie to the Demons, but I thought
he wasn't going to end up cracking their best 22, I think, and they've done the right thing by him by saying, look, we're not going to be able to guarantee game time next year. Let's facilitate you a trade. And that's a good thing that the clubs are starting to do. They're doing it a lot more often. And you see these throwaway picks being given that clubs won't necessarily use, but it's just a goodwill gesture to players they've held on their list for, X amount of years. Yep. And Mishy gets to the Ds, and he's basically a James Magner, but with speed.
And I think... Other than Gumbleton, I don't think there'll be any more trades for Fremantle.
I don't think so either.
And one more thing, with the key defence lack of depth that I was talking about, I think, again, similar to Port Adelaide, they could really look to take, your Fraser Ford, Alex Pearce, or Tom Barras, who I think would be a very good fit. Yeah.
Even Tom Vanderlua as well. He would be a really good... he'd fit in. He's quite quick. He'd fit that structure quite well.
And with Barras and Pearce, they really got a lot of attention because of their beep tests.
Yes, they did. Yep.
We were there.
And
we saw the
hair.
Yeah, we saw the recruiters really flock down and say, "Oh, can we interview you soon?
Yeah, exactly.
When are you free?" So that's about it for Freo. Moving on to the Premiers, and Damon will be talking about Hawthorn.
Yes, the Premiers. Now, they had some unfinished business last year, of course, going down to Sydney in the grand final. And they did go on to finish minor Premiers and then go on and win the Premiership, of course. Had a win-loss record of 19 wins and 3 losses, which is quite impressive. And I think the most impressive part of their season, apart from the Premiership, was overcoming the Kenner curse.
Wasn't it brilliant? Well, it wasn't. I was really hoping Geelong would win.
No, I wanted Hawthorn to win. They deserve to win.
Yeah, they did. They really did in the end.
And what went right, apart from the obvious, winning the ultimate Holy Grail, they did beat other power sides apart from Geelong. I mean, Geelong did beat them twice during the home and away season, so going into the final...
11 times they beat them?
Yeah,
yes.
I think so.
11. They almost got the
Dirty Dozen.
Dirty Dozen. They were hashtag Dirty Dozen. Oh.
But the other side, other power side, they did get the medal over this season was Sydney, of course, who was their bully last season and beat them on all 3 occasions. The other pleasing thing for them was Jared Ruffhead. Now, ever since he did his Achilles, came back and was a powerhouse, ended up winning the the Coleman medal, kicking 68 goals, and really proved, I think, the potent option up forward now with Franklin gone, of course. I don't think they're going to be suffering all that much.
Gunston was absolutely fantastic. I think he was the best player in all the final series.
It's you know what, Buddy's really tapered off this year, and that's no disrespect to him or Hawthorn, but I think it's more so the obviously the underlying spread of the Hawthorn forwards. Ruffhead really had a fantastic year. Rioli,
Hale
Bruce,
had a fantastic
Hale
year.
was fantastic, and Gunston just went to another level.
Gunston.
And especially in the grand final, he was 4 or 5 goals he kicked.
4, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely
And very close
incredible.
to Norm Smith.
Probably. In my,
I'm
happy with Brian Lake.
Yeah.
To be honest, he was more than deserving.
Yeah.
10 intercept marks across half back.
Come on.
Yep.
Come on.
And we saw in the qualifying final against Sydney, they didn't have Franklin, didn't have Rioli, and yet they smashed them by 54 points.
Yeah,
So it goes to show, even without Franklin, they're not going to worry. They're not going to be a hassle there. And speaking of the Norm Smith medalist, Brian Lake, I think he was hands down the best trade last pre-season. Came on in leaps and bounds and really, I think, changed.
Nothing for him.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, steak knives pretty much, and he changed his look. He changed his hairstyle, shed the kilos, and really looked and played like a different player. I think he was all Australian back when he was at the Dogs, wasn't he?
Yes, not every year, but
Yep.
a couple of years he was. Yeah.
Yeah, so he recaptured that form there, and I was rewarded with a Norm Smith. And what went wrong? Wasn't much to say apart from your mob, Joycey. having the wood
Just
over them
ruining
yet
the party.
again.
I'm happy with this. Why couldn't we play them in the finals? Why Carlton?
And over the trade period so far, now they've lost Buddy, of course.
But
But
BT's favourite.
big boy
Oh,
McAvoy,
no.
can't run him down. Oh boy, wowie, big boy.
Big boy. That's our favourite skit, I reckon.
Yeah, now that off by heart. And Buddy, they did get pick 19 in return, which I think is a little bit controversial considering that Collingwood did receive pick 11 for Daisy Thomas. What do you think?
They've traded it now, though.
Yeah.
They've
I think,
downgraded it.
I think when you look at the free agency, I'll just touch on this briefly. Free agency, great concept, brought in for the players. Clubs didn't like it. AFL had to basically return serve and come up with something that was going to soften the blow. It was inevitable players were going to move, and they were going to be big ones as well as ones that weren't so relevant. But we've all now been conditioned that a player's worth is X amount, and obviously teams are always going to overrate their players than others. But when you look at that deal, I mean, you look at the flip side. Buddy Franklin, if he was playing for Hawthorn and Hawthorn won the wooden spoon, they'd have picks 1 and 2.
Yep.
But for the fact that they won the grand final, they finished top of the ladder, which means they get the last pick in the first round, which was then currently pick 18. Sorry, 7.
Yep.
Yeah, 18. Yep, 18.
So they get 19 in that sense.
And they obviously now get 19 as part of that deal based on their finishing position. So it's more so on the sense that, I mean, people tried to bring up the Ablett thing, but there's a clear difference in free agency and a player leaving to join an expansion side. That was brought in. Now, Ablett obviously demanded 2 first-round picks.
Which is
And Scully
worth
got
it.
the same because he also joined an expansion club. It's not the fact where you're comparing players. It's based on the formula that is made by the AFL and dictates a player's worth, whether that is agreeable by supporters or not. Now, I tell you right now, it should be the other way around. But based on Collingwood's position, I mean, Collingwood as well, if we had have won the grand final this year, Daisy would have gotten us pick 19.
He might have stayed, though, if he won the grand final.
Yeah, look, it's true, but it's just as much, to say that he'd go. But it really is the point. I mean, you have to look at, Adam Cooney is probably the best example. Bulldogs have got pick 4. If Adam Cooney had have left for free agency, which he was very likely to do during the year, the Bulldogs would have gone to the draft with pick 4 and 5 again.
if Melbourne have a bad year again next year, which I doubt, I think they'll still be bottom 4, but they'll be competitive in games, and I think they'll be, what is that?
I think they'll
15th?
be, yeah.
But if James Frawley, who's coming into free agency, leaves and a club gives him, $800,000, they're going to get a band 1 compensation pick, and they could technically get, if they finished last, picks 1 and 2.
They definitely can, and that's again, this could be the real dagger through the heart of Melbourne fans. That is, of course, if compensation is still there in 2014, and that. I know that sounds horrible,
I love that. That's like digging the boots.
It's terrible, isn't it? It's awful. You'd say that if Melbourne finished last, they lost James Frawley, they would automatically give them a priority pick based on that. I would say that's just the AFL's way of just making sure there's no shitstorm. But with going back to Buddy, and it is fair, but it's not at the same time. That's the problem.
And the other moves over the off-season to date, Max Bailey, now he did retire, quite unfortunately.
He's a development coach at Richmond now.
Is.
It's all about Richmond with this guy.
It is. That's all I hear. That's all I hear.
It's relevant. We're always relevant.
Always slip it in.
Hell.
Just slipping it in, as they say. Yes, anyway.
Like a librarian. Anyway.
Now, with Bailey retiring, Hawthorn did look a little bit depleted in the ruck. And, if they want to push, sort of go for the tilt for another flag next season, they couldn't really afford to put any of the younger ruckmen in there to fill the void. And the way they went about it to get McAvoy, so smart. So smart.
Brilliant. And the best part about it, nobody saw it coming. We all see these reports, Facebook pages, Twitter people saying this is going to happen, that's going to happen. But this came from out of the sky. Yeah. This was
if anyone saw this coming, what are the lotto numbers, that person? Because
exactly.
This is completely out of left field.
I really like it though. I think, and we saw Hawthorn have gone down this path quite a long time, and I think the last time they took a first round pick was back in 2010.
A long time ago.
And they are essentially trading away their youth of the future, that is, for obviously mature age players that are going to impact now in the hope that it will bring them more premierships. I think the general consensus is, if you look at Brisbane's path they went down, they took every last bleeding drop out of those older players and were quite happy to bottom out like they have been now for the past almost decade, because they've got their hands on 3 consecutive flags. Now, Hawthorn can seriously set up a dynasty. They really can push again next year.
I'd say 2 more. They've got 2 more years, and that's it.
And you know what? It's not beyond them to push for 3 in a row. I mean, I'll happily say that. The problem is that obviously it's all about Richmond with this kid.
Well, if we play Hawthorn.
I really like it. I mean,
true.
look what happened last year. They traded pick 21 to the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs took Nathan Hrvat, who's going to be an hi Nathan, by the way, who's going to be an absolute gun going forward. But on the flip side, they got Brian Lake, ends up basically winning them a flag and gets the Norm Smith medal. And
they still got pick 27 from that, I think. So it wasn't like they gave up their first round and that's it.
But you look at that, and I think Hawthorn are great, and they're very... the word on the grapevine is that they are very easy to deal with. They're not a club that's going to Dorado style and cockblock you at every opportunity. No. They're actually very open and willing to trade freely, and that's because, Graham Wright, Collingwood 1990 premiership player, he knows where it's at. Just going to make that about. I think, you know what, they do it well, and they scout very well, and they address their needs, and they find them, and they always bring players in, and that's a huge tick on their culture, huge tick on their playing group, fantastic member base, home grounds at the MCG.
They're a happy team.
They're a happy team at Hawthorn. They really are. They got Croft. Everybody loves Croft.
Yeah.
Yep. He kissed me on the cheek once.
Oh, did he?
He did.
Ooh.
It's exciting.
Just over it? Did you not wash the cheek?
There's a photo of it. I'll show it to you later.
Which cheek?
Which cheek?
In between the
this
cheeks.
One.
In between the cheeks.
Continue, Damon.
Anyway, yes. So they did virtually trade, you'd have to say, because they did get pick 19 for Buddy, which they've traded for McAvoy. So it's virtually Franklin for McAvoy, and Franklin is expendable, I think, as we said, Roughhead, Gunston, the likes down there.
Hale,
another one.
Forward.
So it's virtually, and McAvoy, is a need that they do need filled, and Xavier Ellis is the other move over the off season as well.
West Coast.
He's gone to West Coast,
it's a bit sad how that's all played out, but at the same time, when How many games did he play this year? I couldn't even tell you. I didn't even see him that many.
I haven't seen him in the past 2 seasons.
And that's probably the point, is that at the end that he gets more opportunity. He's on a 1-year deal at West Coast with a trigger for 2, depending on how his body holds up in performances base. But it was going to happen. If it almost happened last year, and he recommitted for another season. And all
the best to him.
Good on him. Look, he's a premiership player at Hawthorn. He'll remember that. They remember that. I think that's the same. You don't ever knock your premiership stars ever, no matter where they go.
And the last one, or the one that was probably the last one I'd say, that is moved, is Savage gone to St Kilda, of course. And I think he was a depth player. They're not going to miss him much. He's a handy player. I think he'll be very handy for St Kilda.
He was bloody handy for Box Hill in the VFL. He was their best player for the last 4 to 6 weeks running into the finals, and then throughout the finals was their best finals player again.
Yeah.
He's gonna.
And Simpkin gets the call up ahead of him.
Oh, I know. It was
that was
the
savage.
irony.
That was savage.
Oh, that is good.
It's all happening here. I don't mind it. He goes to St Kilda and he'll play in their best 22, and those midfielders. And he's a strong body. He's got some zip. Can kick goals.
Yep.
Look. They get a good deal out of it.
Yeah, and now looks like they're done trading. So what are they doing in the draft?
Looking towards the draft, I think they've got a fair bit of depth across all of the ground, apart from maybe, I think, the midfield. I mean, it is ageing. Brad Sewell is on the outer. He kind of gets found out with his lack of pace, I think. He's a great in and under footballer, but without the pace there, I mean, he does get found out, I guess, at times. So I think that's the sort of player they could be bringing in the draft. What do you think are the sort of players they could be looking at, Paige?
Oh, if Matt Crouch could slide that far, that would be a very good game.
Matt Crouch will be going before 15, 16, I'd say. But I think when they've now got pick 24, I am of the very firm belief that Dale Garlett is going to end up at the Hawks.
At that pick?
I have been given this on very good authority, and Alistair Clarkson has texted Dale every Monday asking him how his games were. They have constant talk. There's a very good... Only 4 clubs have spoken to Dale, and they are Essendon, remarkably, considering he pissed all over that opportunity last year. Hawthorn, as I said. St Kilda are interested, and Gold Coast are thereabouts as well. But there was also a suggestion that Richmond were looking at him. But
relevant once again.
I doubt that now, considering their next pick after their first is in the 3rd round. Yep. He won't be there by then. But I think that he's going to add some... And he's very, very close mates with Brad Hill. And he idolises Sean Burgoyne. And I think... Dale Garlett needs to land in a situation where he has the support network around him, the welfare, the strong culture, and the strong leaders that can really give him that big brother type support that he needs and craves. He will come to Victoria. He will be drafted to a Victorian side. I think they're going to honestly look at him with their second pick.
It's on value.
Or their first pick in the second round, sorry.
Yeah, on value, I think that's what he's worth. I mean... If they could somehow snare him with their actual second-round pick, that would be a very...
Well, that's all
they've
got now is their second-round pick.
They don't have an end of second round? Did they trade that?
Actually, they no, you're right, they do. Sorry, my bad. They do have a end of second round.
Yeah, so if they could get that, I mean, that would be an absolute steal. I mean, still, pick 24 is a steal, but he's worth it, that sort of thing.
It'll be interesting when you look at... I mean, they need a strong inside mid, as you said. Sewell's... not going to be there at the end of next year. Hodges getting on. Yeah, exactly. Mitchell. I mean, look, guys like Mitchell and Hodge will play into their 30s. The problem is though is that how long their body's going to hold up for, and they had desperate need for that strong inside body, and they probably would have. I still think maybe Luke Dunstan can probably creep into pick 24.
Don't think Saints will take him?
I think. Speaking to recruiters, player managers, they probably believe that Dunstan's more of a second rounder. But look, we've seen in the past that clubs that have got those pick 18, 19s, we saw with Collingwood last year, traditionally will take players a little bit higher based on a needs preference. We saw last year that Geelong took Thurlow over their first pick, didn't have another one for another 50-odd.
Yep.
They had to pay overs for him to get him. It's the type of player they needed. So St Kilda probably look at Dunstan and go, we need a strong-bodied inside midfielder. They might get that. They also might be looking at a bloke called Michael Gibbons, who played for the Murray Bush Rangers and played for the New South Wales ACT Rams. He was zoned to GWS, but they only had one position open and they already took Barrett. So he's someone I reckon that would probably be looked at. They do need an inside mid.
Yeah.
And
you don't think Kavara could be that?
Kavar will be a rookie.
Yeah.
Kavar will be a strong rookie.
He's that sort of thing that could replace Sewell. I mean, doesn't have the height of Sewell and that sort of thing, but he certainly has the in and under capabilities.
He definitely does. As I said, he's probably more of an inside chance to be that rookie pick. But apart from that, look, they've got a lot of options. They've still got, Hallahan to come in, Kelly to come in.
Yeah, I think that's a big reason why they were trying to not phase out Sewell, but give him a bit less game time because Hallahan's a gun.
Hallahan's the next in line of play as an inside mid.
Yeah.
But you still want to look towards the future. I mean, if Hallahan doesn't come up as that,
or keeps getting injured.
Yeah. It really will be interesting.
And that about brings us to the end, doesn't it?
It does,
all 18.
I know it's all 18 teams covered, but we'll be back next week, so the trade period will have wrapped up by then.
Thank God.
Why isn't it 2 weeks?
It will be next year, I'm told.
Should.
Why isn't it a day? Just get it over and done
exactly.
with.
2 weeks is fine, I think.
1
week for free agency
yep.
and trade, and 1 week for just trade.
So what we'll be doing next week, we'll be starting to speak about the draft specifically. We'll be going through players of note and the like, and we'll probably just do a quick recap on the trade and free agency period and probably give each club a bit of a rating on how they went. And the draft, everyone loves the draft. Everyone wants to know who their next superstar is going to be, so we'll be talking about that next week. But until then, enjoy. We'll see you then.